What's going on, everyone? I'm Jaren, and today we are talking about Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. In this eighth and supposed final chapter, we are joined by new allies and armed with the means to shut the entity down for good, as Ethan Hunt is in a race against time to prevent the world from changing forever. Back in 2023, we were treated to the first half of the Dead Reckoning story, where we were left at a satisfying and gripping cliffhanger, and then we all thought that we were going to get the second part in at least a year, and then Hollywood went on strike, and production for that second part came to a complete halt. And as time went on, and with little news that we were given about the actual sequel, a lot of fans and moviegoers began to feel a little bit concerned because we got the audio leak of Tom Cruise just losing his mind towards his crew members behind the scenes about breaking safety protocols. That somewhat painted him in a negative light. I didn't like that at all. And then, well, there was some media news coverage about Tom Cruise talking about him not wanting to end the character of Ethan Hunt, that he might have just a little bit more in him, and that felt like it lessened the value of anticipating this as the final chapter, the concluding one, especially when you're trying to wrap up such a big, eventful story. But here we are, 2 years later, 2025, and everything from 1996 to now has led to this. And just like anybody else, I actually grew up with the Mission Impossible franchise because it's one of the very few movies that my dad would actually get excited to watch. Whether that would be us going out to rent at the video store or to go out to the movie theater. I mean, anything with Tom Cruise is going to get my dad out to the cinemas on opening weekend. And I can't say for certain that the first Mission Impossible happened to be my top 3 favorites over the years, but I would have to say what really introduced me to it and what allured me was that dark opening sequence that kicked off an entire action franchise. And having seen the final mission, I have to admit, it was both equal parts disappointing and an emotional, nonstop roller coaster of a farewell. Getting into the positives, I very much admired the sense of finality that this one had, where MI3 and Fallout felt like the perfect bookends to bring the character of Ethan Hunt and his missions to an end. They just kind of kept going. And with the potential threat of the entity and the visual aid of its endgame really made the stakes feel real, where all bets were off, where anything could possibly happen to our heroes and the world that they're trying to save. I mean, the movie already opens up with our characters at a big disadvantage, and I actually admire that because it was much different from how we opened up with a lot of these movies. And seeing that this is a part 2, I just kind of kept stirring in my brain, sitting there in my seat thinking, how are they going to proceed? How are they going to earn an upper level against the entity? And it almost felt impossible, no pun intended. The action set pieces and stunts were very far and few in between compared to the last 5 films, but the suspense and the imminent threat that they faced in the last hour really kept my pulse in a chokehold. I mean, when he finally makes his underwater journey to the submarine, I caught myself just holding my breath the entire time. I was lucky enough to check out the IMAX fan event, which was beautiful because we were treated with the entire third act sequence getting presented in the enhanced picture ratio, especially when it came to that aerial sequence, because boy, oh boy, my mom nearly lost it. She was just covering her eyes and just making like just terrified for her life because it was wild. It was insane. And to know for a fact that Tom Cruise really did this, the way that he just was hanging off that one wing where the wind was about to blow his face off, phenomenal. Getting into some of the talent here, we got Haley Atwell returning as Grace, and she's become more of a team member this time around, honing her skills for impeccable timing, and she's kind of more of a leader, more of a prominent agent when we see her in this, and I gotta say, she could probably rival Cruise for his position. And then we got Benji, who is played by Simon Pegg, and he's given a lot more screen presence and the spotlight, especially towards the third act, where he's just facing the pressure head on. And there's something about his growth since his introduction in the third movie, where he's just become a lot more serious, a lot more take charge kind of guy. Palm Clementif and Greg Tarzan Davis might have been overshadowed in their roles of Paris and Degas when it came to Dead Reckoning, but I really love that they take the opportunity to really impact the story in their own way. Starting off with Paris, who becomes the wild trigger finger of the team, and especially with her off-screen relationship with Peg, I think that they reflect a lot of the unofficial power couple, especially when it comes to them working really well together when facing the odds. Degas also stops being the silent partner who just takes orders and really injects resilience and traits of a hero where it matters. Also, we got President Erica Sloan back in here, played by Angela Bassett, and she is given a lot more of an integral role this time around, which makes all three alliances IMF material. Last but not least, we got Tom Cruise pulling out all the stops in order to achieve the impossible. Now, Ethan Hunt has always made his entrances in each mission very cool and suave as he could be, but in this one, we really start the movie off and his look is very run down. And that is not a diss to the actor in real life, but he did not look good, and I think it really painted his mortality, that making each step towards the end a lot more urgent. Each pivot that he's made in order to save the world in each and every Mission Impossible movie has made this final chapter much sweeter. Having said that, Tom Cruise's action set pieces have been much bigger and more grand and riskier in the past, and I do think that it's very much inferior in comparison to the two that we do get here. But in the end, it is rather satisfying. It is entertaining. It is wild. It is insane, because this is the most peak that cinema is going to be with the efforts of Tom Cruise and his crew to put on film. This really had me at the edge of my seat. Getting into my mixed negative opinions, now, if you haven't had the chance to rewatch the previous 7 films, or barely remember any of the details of Dead Reckoning, not to worry, because they spend the first hour to 80 minutes bombarding you with callbacks, flashbacks, and exposition of all of it. Yeah, to some it's going to be a divisive element, like having the skip button on the recap tab for a show that you're streaming on, or letting it play out. See, when I watched it with my sister, she didn't mind it because she's barely had a chance to really catch up, so she didn't mind that at all. For me, unfortunately, it felt like The Matrix Resurrections and Insidious The Red Door, where they would over-explain the past with baffling choices and inserting highlight reels. Like, I'm talking about the scene where we see Tom Cruise dropping from the ceiling and almost hitting the floor in the first movie. You see that shit happen like 4 times. I mean, so unnecessary. I just wish there's a version out there one day where we could cut out the first hour to 80 minutes and just have the 110-minute version. Because once we get past that point, it is all crisp from there. It is perfect. Almost. I also very much disliked that Ving Rhames, who plays Luther, how much screen presence he has, because he's just benched for his entire screen time. And there's a contrivance with his character that is made that for an exposition-filled movie, we are just immediately forced to accept, and I did not accept that. I didn't like that at all because we weren't eased into it. Esai Morales is also returning as the menacing antagonist Gabriel, and the little history that they set up with him and Ethan in the last movie gets barely fleshed out any further, making a lot of his demeanor and goals very irrelevant as the key and prominent threat, and he becomes more of a plot device. So yeah, I didn't care for him at all this time around. Overall, I don't know who's responsible, whether it's Christopher McQuarrie, Tom Cruise, or the Hollywood strike itself, really just making this movie do a lot of the legwork than its predecessor, losing a lot of its rhythm. And that's because they're just holding our hands through the narrative, trying to appease to both the casual fans and the diehard fans of this franchise. But I think that the entity was its franchise's most formidable foe, because it was throwing a lot of familiar plot points at Ethan Hunt, and that's not a mistake. And I think that it was utilizing an algorithm in order to push the character of Ethan Hunt to his limitations. Like The Dark Knight Rises, it is plagued with a lot of pacing and execution, but it is a good Mission Impossible movie overall. It is not a great one, but it is a good one. And despite it not being the most rewatchable entry of the franchise, it is absolutely worth seeing on the biggest screen possible. All right, guys, that's all I got to share about that movie. Go ahead and check it out on the big screen if you want to. Look forward to more reviews. I am Jaren Agbanawag. I want to thank you guys again for taking some time out of your day to hear me talk some movies. I'll see you guys at the theater. In the meanwhile, take care.